Hello, welcome to this series again. We have been exploring how to actually get from zero level in Boomi to actually get into a hero, being able to integrate and design processes interface, and we actually explored the differences between the various integration tools like Boomi, MuleSoft, and also later on we'll be looking at SAP CPI. And later on in the series, we plan to look at other because every day we see very new interesting tools actually coming big into the market. So we'll be exploring each of them separately. So actually, in the last two series, we did two episodes. We looked at FTP and SFTP. So today we'll be trying to be designing. We'll be designing an SFTP scenario where we'll be able to say JSON from our postman into so we'll be sending it using an SFT. We'll convert this JSON using, and also we'll now save it into our server. We currently have a server in the cloud which is hosted on AWS, AWS Lightsail. If you don't know how to set up one, you can check one of our tutorials. We have the tutorials on how to set up a free tier server um, for the first month. Yeah, so that's what we actually used for designing this process. We have an AWS Lightsail server, and the idea of this is we'll create a scenario where we'll send JSON file, and actually we'll save a file here on this folder. So I'll just actually do an ls command here. So you see the current files that are in this folder, because this is a live server. We have informations that are here. So you can actually see a file here that says clients, contact details, employees, F1, F1, F1 to F1, 3, and F1. So basically, would be creating a new file into this process, into this folder, and later on we'll be reading from it. Because we're using Amazon Light Sales, it's advisable we actually using SFTP. So we have a secured key stored on a local system, and that's what we'll be doing. So let's get right started into the process. We'll be sending in some text into this some information into the system which contains customer name, phone number, and address. We'll be designing all that into the process. So let's get started quickly. It's going to be an interesting one. So I'm just going to create a new process. So I'm just going to call this save new contacts. So this is going to just be a listing process. Like what we always do, we just click on this to make recommended changes, because we don't want to capture some details such as runtime, performance statistics, which helps the performance. So we actually will be working. We are going to be sending a JSON file. So basically, what we'll be looking for here is a web service server, and an action here would always be listening, because on the start shape would always be listening. Then also we need to come to operations. So in operations is where things get interesting. So I click on create an operation. So the first operation I want to do is listing JSON. So what am I doing here? It's a get operation. Yeah. So what are we trying to do with this operation? We are going to be we'll be saving multiple. So the idea of this is to be able to save multiple JSON files at multiple records. Um, so I'll just show you. I'll just open Sublime and show you what an example of what our input would be like. So it gives you a better picture. So currently, this is what our input would be like. Would have customer name, phone number, address. So for different customer, we'll be able to send it multiple at once, and we'll be able to save it into the system. So the expected input type is going to be a JSON object. We are now working with XML, but it's the same principle. If you're working with XML, we have used XML in this series. You can actually check it out. So we are going to create a request profile. So a request profile, I'm going to just click on new. So I'll just call this, sorry, I'll just call this um, contacts details. Yes. So I'll just say no, I'll create my profile manually. So under root, I'm going to select this to be under root. I'm going to select this to be an array, which is repeating. Yeah. Then under array, I can actually import this. Which will be way easier. But I just want to show in case you're in a scenario where you actually need to design it yourself. So under we have to create elements 1, which is going to be the first element of the array. And inside the first element of the array, you're going to have you keep this as default. Inside here, you're going to now have an object. Yeah. You change this to objects, and inside here you add an object. You add your entries. So for my, I'll just expand this. I need multiple. Yeah, sorry for. Okay. So for my file here, we said I want the first ID to be customer name. The second item to be phone. And the third item to be address. So I'm just going to save this. I'll just come back again to explain everything I did. So I said the input type is going to be a JSON object. Now, because you're sending only one type of object, despite it's a repeated, it's an array of object, but it's one object. Inside the objects, you have different arrays. So let me just explain the structure of it. You have the root element, but what we are saying is here we are sending one object, but inside this object, we are going to have different arrays. So yeah, we say okay, yeah, we have these arrays, but now I'm going to give you what a sample array would look like. That's what we call array elements 1. And because of inside this array elements, we are now having a single JSON object. That's where we have this object here, and we now define the data types of each of the objects, the name of each object. So we have name, phone, and address. So that's it. So let's see. For the output type, we don't really need any much information. I'll just leave it as blank, and I'll save and close. I'll say okay. So the next thing I want to do is a mapping function. I want to be able to map this into a CSV file because we are getting a JSON file. I want to be able to map this into a CSV file. To do that, I'll get started. I'll say transform JSON to CSV. So and I create a new map. I'll just say JSON to CSV. So what is going to be my map source here? We can just rely on the profile we created earlier on, which is a JSON object, and we call it contacts details. Yes, if you can see, it's basically the same thing. Then here, we want to create a CSV file. A CSV file is a flat file. It's a flat file. So we'll click on choose, create a new file, and we say new profile. So in here, what do we want to do? We want to do the same thing. We want to create 3 elements. The first one is going to be customer name. The second one is going to be phone and address. So I just prefer copying and pasting. This seems quicker for me. You can type it out yourself, and it's for me that I avoid errors this way. So I'm done. creating my profile element. I'll just call this contact details. So but this is going to be a type of a flat file profile. So I can save this. So basically we have this, we have the same field, customer name, phone number, address, and I just want to map each of them to customer name goes here, phone number goes here, address goes here. However, don't forget, if you want to process further, you can actually create a function in between here, and it will give you the opportunity to process further. So I'm going to just save and close. Yes. Oh, wow, I misplaced all that. I'm just going to do transform JSON to CSV. So since I've already explained it, I'll just be a little bit faster. Okay, it's still here. Say okay. So the next thing is to work on our FTP. What we want to do on our FTP is to be able to save this into our SFTP server. So I'm going to say define properties. So in define properties, what do we want to define here? We just want to say, okay, the name of our file is going to be new contact details. So I'm just going to do this document property. I go to SFTP. So in SFTP, you can define a file name, remote directory, and move to directory. So what I'm interested in working on is on file directory, and I click on OK. So it shows up here. All I just need to do is click on parameter and say, okay, what's the name of my file? You can actually, if you're working with you want it to be dynamic, you can actually rely on current data, or you can actually rely on profile elements or SQL statements. So these are the ones that I've used as an integrator. But for this scenario, we'll just be using static because once called the file new contact details. See okay. And the next thing is once actually put in the SFTP shape. So like as I explained in the previous class, we defined SFTP and SFTP configuration. So that's what we'll be relying on. So our profile, our display name, what are we going to call this? Let's call it save CSV. Connector is an SFTP, and action here should be send because we are trying to save. What is a connection? We have already defined the connection earlier on called light sail configuration because we are using Amazon light sail. Then the operation is we need to actually define. We need to just define the folders and the right steps. So I'm just going to click on a new operation here. So it's simple. Just we are creating a unique name for the file, and also we need to actually put in what's the directory name of where are we trying to save into. So I'm going to save into home bitnami and this folder called we post. So if I show you because currently if you can look at my system, you can see I'm currently in we post underscore 01. If I change folder directory upwards and I do print working directory, so you can see I'm in home slash bitnami. So if I now move a step downwards and I say we post, this is how I came up with the name, the directory name we post bitnami under home slash bitnami underscore we post. So this is how I came up with the name. So I'm just going to give this a new name. Operations folder. I'll save this. Okay, everything seems okay. I click on OK. Then my process is already done. All I just need to do is click join it, join this, and I'll just put a stop process here. I don't have any return message, so I'm just going to be using a simple stop message here. I'll say stop. Yes. And I will save. because remember we can't test this directly because we are using a web server. So we have to actually deploy it as a component, and we'll be able to use the um we'll be able to create package components and actually deploy it. So I'm just going to create package components, add details. So on this place is just you click next steps, except you just want to supply some extra information, descriptions and the rest. So I click on deploy. So where am I deploying this to? For my scenario, I actually have two environments. I have a dev environment and have a production environment. My production environment is actually linked to my local atom on my system. The reason I'm using a local atom is because I have some configurations, like the key file to my server is actually resides on my system. So my Amazon key file to my system actually resides on my system. Let me just see if I can actually show that quickly. Um, just to get that. So currently I have these two files. A light seal default key. You get normally you get the PEM key, you generate the you get the PEM key, generate the PPK key. Then I'm using putty. I showed that in the earlier tutorial. So the reason I'm using production is because this key resides on my system, and I don't boomi as of now doesn't allow me to put this key on the cloud. So I'm going to use the production system, which is connected to my local atom. I click on next. I review. Everything seems pretty okay. I save. Okay. So we can now go into Postman to test the we can go into Postman to test this. So I'm just going to click on duplicate tab. So the question is, what is going to be the URL for my post request? So because I'm working on my, so if you're actually working on a real server, this would be the IP address of your real server. But me, I'm working on 1990 on my local server. When I configured this, I explained this in earlier tutorials. I'm using port 1990 for my atom, and to get understand this part, all you just need to go do is go to your process, click on the operation here. You see this address slash ws slash simple slash get savings multiple. That's what I'm going to use. That's what I'm going to send. Make sure you remove the double slash. I am not using any authorization. In case you get lost, you can actually come to your manage and your manage atoms and actually see if you're actually using any authorizations. So I'll just do that once more to make it clear for those in case you're just watching this tutorial. So I'm on my production. I have dev and production. So I click on this, my local production. When I click on shared web server under user management, so you can see this is my IP address 1990. That shows where my port is currently installed. So I don't have any special user for my local host, so I can actually connect with it without much hassle. So I'll just go ahead in the body. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this in Postman. Okay, and let's post this. So it seems everything went well. So let's check in our folder whether we have a new file called new contact details. Okay, we have a new file called new contact details, but I think we made a mistake when we were creating this file. We forgot to add the CSV extension. So I'm just going to come back here to make things proper. I'm going to configure, and I'm going to click on this. The actual name is going to be .csv. Yeah, and I'm going to just change this 1. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to redeploy this again. Just next, deploy. I'm going deploying it to my production local atom. Next, deploy. Okay, so now I'm going to repose this again. Push this. Everything seems fine. And when I do this, I don't have the file. The file doesn't seem to exist. So with this, just hold on. So we can actually see that we have the file now, new contact details .csv. So that brings us to the end of this particular episode. The next episode we'll take this, we'll reverse this process, we will read this file and actually send it out into a JSON format. So thank you for watching this tutorial. If you have questions, feel free, post in the comments, ask. It's a very interactive forum and we'll get back to you. Thank you.